My name is Joe and welcome to this channel, and this video is called Non Duality, a simple guide to oneness. So the first thing to understand about non-duality is that it really isn't anything special. It's often portrayed as something that's really out there, some kind of mystical, esoteric understanding of life. But all non-duality attempts to do, and this is every tradition that's umbrellaed within non-duality, is to provide or point out the most simple way that we can live. And the most simple way that we can live is to acknowledge the already accomplished oneness that forms our life. So when we're born, we are born as a non-dual being. If you look at a baby and you see the way the baby expresses itself, it doesn't really show any difference between its limbs and your limbs, its face and your face, the environment around it, its feet, its food, its space. It all appears to a baby as one experience. There is no separation. And then over time, we train into our babies, into ourselves, this separate way of viewing. And this is essential because this formulation of this separateness is how we develop an ego so that we can protect ourselves, feed ourselves, care for ourselves, and connect with each other. So if you don't have a separate self, how can you connect with someone because there's no separation? So if you don't see yourself as a separate entity, then how are you going to protect yourself from the dangers that are inherent in everyday life? So this is a central process. But along with that separation, that move away from oneness, we end up in a situation whereby we begin to suffer. It doesn't happen at first, but it does happen. It happens to most people. No matter how old you are, most people have reached a point where they've had enough, right? That is the path of separation. It's essential, but it's deeply flawed way to live. And there is a better way to live. And that way is to recall and reignite our sense of oneness. So how do we demystify oneness? How do we show that it is already how we live? Well, it's really quite simple, because if you notice your perceptions, and it does require some inquiry, but if you notice your perceptions, they are all appearing in the same space. So for instance, if you think now of a blue elephant, in your mind, you're experiencing an image of a blue elephant. And outside of your mind is this world in which you're viewing this screen. Maybe you're looking at some kind of device. It could be a laptop or a phone. So there is already this perception of separation because you have located the image of the blue elephant in your mind, and at the same time you are gazing at a screen which perceives to be outside of the mind, and there is already a sense of separation. But in reality, what are the markers that tell you where these things are? So what tells you the blue elephant is inside your mind, and what tells you the device that you're looking at is outside of your mind? Well, it's other appearances. So there's a distance between yourself and the device, and there is a sense, another appearance, a sense that the thought is inside your mind. But what are those senses and distances made from? More appearances. So this is called dependent origination. All experience that you ever experience comes to fruition through the dependent perceptions that give it its authority. An example would be this clock, right? It's a bit shiny. This clock, and that comes into your existence. But then what makes the clock appear to be a clock? It's the circular shape and the face. The clock's appearance is dependent upon you interpreting the circle and the face. If you didn't know what the face was, you wouldn't know it was a clock. So everything that you come to know it through a prior lower appearance. And that goes all the way back to nothingness, right? So every appearance is dependent on another appearance. Every perception is dependent on another perception. Every assumption or conclusion that you make is based on assumption. And where do they all appear from? The same space. So your thoughts about this conversation, the device you're looking at, the memory of the clock, the idea that this is nonsense or this is brilliant, all of that is occurring in one pervasive space. And a shorthand name for that space we call mind. So non-duality is referring to the nature of mind. That the mind is not dualistic. The thoughts appear to be dualistic, and the mind creates a dualistic world. But the mind itself is non-dual. Everything is appearing in one space, comprised of the same thing, consciousness. Because for you to know anything, you can only know it through consciousness. Without consciousness, there is no knower. We could call that the stainless knower, the completely pure stainless knower of all appearances. And that is really what non-duality is pointing to. It's pointing to this completely stainless, already awake, already liberated knower of appearances, which is you. Now, obviously, this is a 5-minute talk about non-duality, and it's just pointing out the key understandings to just even understand what the topic is. But it does come with a practice, because most people don't hear one discussion on non-duality and that is it for the rest of their lives. The awakening part, the introduction to non-duality, which is what you're having now, can be very rapid. But over time, I feel most people benefit from some kind of practice to fully inhabit this non-dual understanding within their body, mind and life. So what might start to happen at first is, as you become familiar with yourself as a non-dual being, you may find that certain stresses and strains that you've had in the past become softer, or they begin to dissolve, because you're no longer feeling so struck by the troubles in life, because you understand they have no separate origin. In my life example, I used to be quite forgetful, and I used to lose a lot of iPhones. I think my record was like 3 in a year. And when I had this understanding of non-duality that grew in its power, I realized that the phone is non-separate from myself. So yes, there is a practical implication, a financial cost, and other issues which come with losing one's phone, but there wasn't an emotional component. There wasn't a sadness, there wasn't a frustration, there wasn't a, oh, you've done it again. It was just, the phone has disappeared. Ultimately, it's non-separate from myself. Now I can raise the finances, get another phone. So that's just one example. And over time, what happens is that as you become more familiar with yourself as a non-dual being, then other things in your life begin to correct. It's almost like an autocorrect that actually works. It just starts to reshape parts of your life to be in alignment with this beautiful understanding and to be in alignment with your true nature. And obviously when that happens, other things fall into place. The way I sometimes describe it is, if you imagine a tree that's growing near the lintel of a house, like the roofing area, the tree was to grow up, it would just literally just curve around. And I've seen this in different buildings, probably where I got this idea from. It just curves around and carries on growing. Or if it's easier, it might grow through. Whatever it does, it doesn't meet this as an obstacle to fight with. It just meets it as an appearance and allows it to be as it is, and does whatever is naturally required or opens up to pass that obstacle. And that is the way that you begin to live your life when you yourself align with your true nature. That is how you see obstacles that you come across on your own journey. So it's a very simple way to see this stainless knower that you are. And let's just do it now. So it's a 3-question game, and just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Are you aware of this clock? Are you aware of this remote control? Are you aware? That last question is key. So obviously you are aware of the clock, and obviously you are aware of the remote control, and obviously you are aware. But what did you look at? Most people don't even know what they looked at because they're so familiar with their own being, because it's all you are and it's always been with you, that they don't know what they looked at. But what you looked at was your own being. Now, your being is the only thing in the entire universe that you can look at that's not a thing. Everything else is an object. I've got other things here. There's a microphone, my t-shirt, my face, that sun on that side, I think it is, and the lights at the back. They're all objects. You're aware of all of them. And when I ask you, are you aware? You go, yeah. Well, how do you know? You're not looking at your hands. You don't look at your hands. You don't look at your eyes. You don't look at your ears. You don't look at your memories. You don't look at your sensations. You just look at this innate understanding that you are aware, which you say for yourself, I am aware. And that is the stainless knower. The only thing that can say I is the one consciousness that we all share, this pure oneness. That's the only thing that can say I. Thoughts can't say I. They cannot say I. Now that I can become confused with ego, but the I is the stainless knower. So every time you say I, even if you're talking about stuff in a dualistic way, even if you're talking about yourself as a separate person, you're still the stainless knower. And when you realize that, you begin to see that I've always been present. I've always been aware. I am, not only am I aware, I am awareness. And that is the way the non-dual teaching progresses individuals who become infused and motivated to follow its path. So this is just a little introduction to non-duality. I hope you enjoyed it, and ask any questions that you have in the comments, and I shall see you in the next video.